You're watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.
Monday, and how the turntables. The Toronto Maple Leafs get 5 out of 6 points on their road trip. We are here for McGuire Mondays, and we have Pierre McGuire, of course, joining us as I'm Julie Stewart-Binks. And Pierre, we just said that you had assumed and thought that the Leafs were going to get 6 out of 6 points, but you were not far off with 5 out of 6, including a massive win against the LA Kings, who had only lost 3 at home. Now they've lost 4 at home. But after losing in a shootout to San Jose for the second time this season, they come back with a huge win against LA. They cap off the road trip with a win against Anaheim. Just overall, those 3 games, what is the biggest thing that highlights to you about what this team is and where they are now?
They're a balanced group right now. They're getting star power. You saw it. You talked about the LA game. You know, Marner was good in that game. Matthews was good in that game. They're bigger players. Nyes was good in that game. Johnny Tavares was obviously very good in that game. Their star players were really good. Then you go the next day in a back-to-back against a rested Anaheim team, and then your role players have to step up. Max Domi with a highlight reel goal. Mitchell Marner scores a beautiful goal on a breakaway, but it's forced off a turnover. And so that's grunt work. That's hard work. It's not slick work. And then Lorentz just doing his chores down by the net. So I think it's balance. I think it's physicality. I think they've made some adjustments with their in-zone coverage, especially after the San Jose game where they're more aggressive, coming out and playing against the point men of the opposition, Julie. And that's why they force those turnovers. So I'm actually really encouraged. And then Joe Wall and Anthony Stolarz, can't say enough about the tandem. They've been really good together.
There's a lot of great things to go into there, and I guess I will go off of what you just said with the fact that Joseph Woll played against Anaheim Ducks, had a bit of a bounce-back game after not necessarily having one of his best outings the time before. What does that mean for him and for this club to be able to just maybe put an exclamation point on the fact that he can come back and do things?
I think it says they have a lot of confidence in him, and I think they see how mentally tough he is. And I think the biggest thing is guys want to play in front of them. I think they're really happy as a team with the depth they have in goal. Because if you watch that game with LA, and I know you did, you see the way the players reacted to Stolarz and some of the saves he had to make. Now, he didn't have to make a plethora of them, but when he had to come up large, he came up large. You could see the body language of the team. It's like, no big deal. We know he's good. And it was the same thing with Joseph Woll the next day in Anaheim, where I thought the team looked really comfortable in front of him. That's not an easy team to play against right now, Anaheim. They're young. They're feeling no pressure at all. They're having a ton of fun playing, and they see the future, and they say, we're going to be pretty good, actually. We got Leo Carlsson. We got Trevor Zegras. We got Troy Terry. We got Cutter Gauthier. We got Mason McTavish. We got a lot of good stuff here. So they're having fun playing. There's no stress in their game, and those are dangerous teams to play against.
Right, and they can also be trap games, as we've seen. But in that last game, the Anaheim game, we'll go into it a bit more depth. You mentioned Max Domi. He scored. Mitch Marner scores. Steven Lorentz had an incredible game, as well as Simon Benoit. Benoit with 3 points in a game like that.
Yep.
Like when you see, it's like the depth players, it's the bottom 6, it's other than obviously Marner, but a guy like Benoit getting 3 points, he's setting up guys. You mentioned the forcing the turnover for the Marner goal. Maybe how is he sort of Benoit? He had gone under a bit of scrutiny recently, but I know you were hot on him earlier in the season. But maybe how is he sort of like evolutionized his game to where he is now?
Well, offensively, he's really improved his game because when I saw him play in junior, he didn't have the same stick and puck skills. Then I watched him play in Anaheim, and I said, this guy's going to be a force. You could tell. I was working in Ottawa then. We spent a lot of time scouting in those years. And I saw Benoit playing for the Anaheim Ducks, and they weren't particularly good, but he was. He played big. He played strong. He moved. He was a really good first passer. And I really commend the Leafs for going out and being aggressive and getting him. But the thing that I liked about yesterday against Anaheim, and Julie, dyed-in-the-wolf Leaf fans will know what I'm talking about, when he gave up the goal to Laferriere off the rush on Saturday night, you could see, go watch the tape and see what he said. He's mad at himself. And you could tell that brought a whole different level of passion to his game, and he brought that passion into the Sunday afternoon/night game. And he responded. He responded really well. So I love the professional pride that he has more than anything else. I love that.
Right. And I think that response is so important. It's like mistakes will and can and will happen, be made, but it's like, how are you going to respond to that when push comes to shove, when you're going down the stretch, you want to be able to win this division, or some people, will get into it, might not want them to, depending on the matchup. But what do you think about the fact that the Leafs blocked 22 shots versus the Ducks 9, but that overall sort of team defense, which we've seen in championship winning teams like we saw last year with the Florida Panthers, but now that the Leafs have kind of started to adopt a bit of that identity?
I love that point that you're raising. It goes back to what I was talking about. They got to fix their end zone coverage. They got to take away time. They got to take away space, and they got to do a better job getting in the lanes. They definitely did that. They were a tired team yesterday, but you could tell they knew they had to dig deep to get that win. And one of the ways you have to dig deep, do the little things, blocking shots, taking hits to make plays. There are two things that stood out on the score sheet from the last two games. One, the physical edge. They were extremely physical in both, I thought, in a smart way. Not over killing people, but in a smart way. The other thing, they won over 60% of their faceoffs in back-to-back games. Made a huge difference in LA to win in that building, and it made a massive difference to win in Anaheim. So you look at Austin, strong on faceoffs, getting help from his wingers too. Tavares, really strong on faceoffs. Domi, really smart with faceoffs. Kampf, perfect fourth center. So you look at it, the faceoff play matters. Whenever you're over 60%, that really is huge.
Yeah, huge. Just what a great point to bring up, because then you have possession of the puck, and that completely changes so much of what you're capable of doing. And you mentioned Austin Matthews and that top line that had been taking a lot of flack recently for maybe not necessarily living up to the expectations, but from what you saw, especially the last two games, what is it about them that maybe gives you confidence that they can be something special to help push this team further down the stretch?
They're pushing the pace of the game. I thought they were, when they're not playing well, they're playing pedestrian. They're playing slow. They're trying to be slick with the puck. They're not playing a power speed game. Watch Austin now. When he gets the puck, he's accelerating with the puck. Mitchell Marner, same kind of thing. You watch the goal yesterday. He has to outrace Gudas to get to the net. And then he has enough time to pump fake a shot, get the goaltender down and out, and then he goes to his forehand and makes it, pretty routine goal for him. But Matthew Nyes, same thing. He's a big guy. He can really skate. And even though he has a goal disallowed yesterday, what I liked about Nyes, where he was when that goal was disallowed, he's right at the top of the crease. So they're all playing to their identity. And I think the number one thing for all of them is pushing the pace, and they're doing that now, and it makes a difference.
You mentioned Matthew Nyes, and even near the end of the game, he could have had one of like the goals of the century. It seemed like I was watching. I was like, oh my gosh, is this going to happen? This would be incredible. But Matthew Nyes seems to have taken his game to another level, even though we keep saying that he has continuously gotten better or has evolved or he's got an extra edge to him. But he seems as though this could be a guy that really, really does change sort of the genetic quote unquote makeup of this team that goes into the playoffs this year that is different from years past.
So if you look at the top three left wingers for Toronto right now, Matthew Nyes, Bobby McMahon, and Scott Laughton. Right now, those are their top three left wingers. They're fast, they're strong, they're big, they're not shy. That's hard to play against. Shift after shift after shift. So if you're the other team's right defense in particular, you're going to get worn out. One of the things for Matthew, more than anything else, he won the lottery. He's playing with Mitchell Marner and Austin Matthews. Think about that for 1 second. That's amazing. So he's playing with these dynamic puck possession players. He knows a lot like when the late Clark Gillies was playing with Brian Trottier and Michael Bossy. You know where to go. Just get to the net, and get to the net in ill humor, create space for yourself, and you're going to get a lot of opportunities to score. And that's what he's doing. So I'm really impressed by what Toronto's done. I think the coach have done a magnificent job. It all started, I think, with a huge bounce back win against Philadelphia that eventually got John Tortorella fired. But there's a lot to like about this Toronto team, a lot to like. And they're in first place, Julie. Say whatever. You can nitpick all you want. That team's in first place in the Atlantic Division.
Right. And they have a very interesting schedule coming up, which we'll get to momentarily. But I want to ask you about John Tavares. I mean, the guy is having such an incredible career year. He could score 40 goals this year. He's got 35 goals, 69 points in 67 games so far. I mean, it can't just be the amulet. He's taken his game to a level where it's resurged, like especially at his age, and also the captaincy, all that kind of stuff, all these things happening. But like, I guess mentally and physically, what goes into a guy being able to have a almost like a bounce back year like this, a statement year?
He doesn't have that C weighing on his chest, number one. The way he handled the transfer of power, let's call it, was so first class and so John Tavares. Proud to be a Maple Leaf, chose to come back to Canada where he had other choices, chose to play for his childhood team when he had many other choices with less scrutiny. Took it right in the chops for a lot of the playoff failures this team has had. Never pointed a finger or complained. This is hockey karma 101. This guy deserves everything he's getting right now. I couldn't be happier for John. And the biggest thing is, and I know people were upset that he didn't get any recognition about going to the Four Nations. I think part of the reason why he surged, look at his point totals since the end of the Four Nations. He's a little older, as you said, and John knows it. I don't mean that with any disrespect. He is a little older for a hockey player. But man, oh man, those extra days of rest, truly, that's helped him a ton.
Mm-hmm. It certainly shows, and I mean, there's an extra gear that he's gotten to that I imagine he doesn't have a contract past this year too, so I'm sure that adds some motivation to some of these guys.
That's fair.
Yeah, and I mean, now looking at the fact that you mentioned, okay, so they've been 6-1-1 in their last 8, which beforehand there was a lot of people in Toronto writing the eulogy of this team and that their numbers were just inflated and maybe they're not as good as they were. And I challenged you a lot on that, but you were you've stuck with the same, you've been authentic with your point of view this entire season. I'll give you a lot of credit for that. And they have come back and they've rewarded you, the hockey gods, the karma, with showing you that they're good at this. Is that the fact that they've been able to kind of maybe switch the narrative? Is that part just riding the Toronto Maple Leafs roller coaster, or did something change?
A few things changed. One, they really started to become fans of what the coach is selling, not just the head coach, the assistant coach. Let's look at the power play. Think about the first 20 games of the season where this power play was terrible. Right now, the power play is 5th in the league. I learned this a long time ago from Scotty Bowman, Julie. It's a thing called a special teams quotient. You had the penalty kill percentage and the power play percentage. If you want to win the Stanley Cup, you've got to be 105 or higher. That's just it. The Toronto Maple Leafs, as we speak right now, after yesterday's game, I did the math this morning, they're 104.5. They're 104.5. So they're in a really good spot because that special teams quotient doesn't lie. That's one of the true numbers, barometers, along with goal differential, that shows you exactly where your team is. So they're in a good position, number one. Number two, the trade deadline. I know Lawton had a tough start, but look at Brandon Carlo. Watch the fight that he has with Malott the other night against LA. That's hardcore stuff, and he didn't bat an eye. And that's really not Brandon Carlo's thing. But he did it, and he did it because he's proud to be part of this team. That speaks volumes to the players on the bench, in the dressing room, when you get on the plane or the bus to go to the next city. They've got a lot of good stuff going on, and I think finally Max Domi's getting rewarded for being a good soldier with this team. That goal he scored yesterday in Anaheim, that was brilliant. That was beautiful. And I think he's a perfect third-line center for them. I don't think it's where they thought he'd be when they signed him, but sometimes it works out. They were counting on Lawton to be that center, Julie. Lawton's better on the left wing right now. So there's a lot of stuff going on. if you look at the balance of their lines, it's really formidable. It's really strong.
Yeah, and fortuitously for them, they've been able to have Lawton be able to be on the left wing when they had sort of circled him as that third line center. As you mentioned, Max Domi getting rewarded for the work he's put in for, night in, night out. We had expected higher things from him, but he is now really sort of finding his way, finding his groove, as a lot of the guys are. And just overall for the defense, you mentioned Brandon Carlo. What else? How would you sort of rank, I guess, Tanev's back. How would you rank sort of how the decor are right now?
Well, I like Tanev and McCabe a lot, especially when the playoffs come, because matchups are going to matter. And they're going to have a 1A matchup group, and that's going to be McCabe and Tanev. And they're going to have a 1B matchup group. That's going to be Riley and Carlo. I think what will happen with Ekman Larson and Benoit, they'll get minutes. They're probably going to play in the playoffs as long as it's regulation time, probably 14 to 16 minutes a game, which is good for them. But for Benoit, I think he's going to get more penalty killing time, and that'll take some pressure off of Morgan Riley and allow him maybe some more power play time. So we'll see how that played out. But I think what they've got is good mobility on the back end, Julie. They've got a lot of guys that understand how to win, especially Tanev. Tanev really gets the winning part of it. Carlo gets the winning part of it. Ekman Larson gets the winning part of it. And I think that helps Riley. That helps McCabe. That helps Benoit. When you got those guys that have won before, I like this team. I grew up in Montreal, but I like this Toronto team a lot. I think they're good.
Yeah, that's saying a lot. That's big of you to be able to say that. And speaking of the Montreal Canadiens, they are taking on Florida Panthers on April 1st, and then the Panthers will be playing the Leafs on April 2nd. So the Leafs get the Panthers on the back end of back-to-back. We know that the Habs are really fighting. They are wanting to be a playoff team as well. What will you be looking for in the Leafs Panthers game to know sort of as a measuring stick where the Leafs are?
So first of all, I watched the Montreal Florida game on Sunday afternoon from Florida. It was a 1:00 start Eastern time. Montreal gave everything they had because they had a dreadful road trip. Terrible. They hadn't won a game. They had no points from the road trip. They were in trouble. And they found a way to win. And the way they found a way to win is play discipline, frustrate the Florida Panthers, get a lot of pucks and bodies to the net, win battles on the boards, which they were able to do, which they hadn't done earlier in the road trip. And I think this will be a very emotional game Tuesday night in Montreal. I don't know how much juice the Florida Panthers are going to have left in the tank because Montreal in particular, they're going to go after them. I think Florida's going to come in not nearly as strong as they could be because of what happened on Sunday in South Florida, and then they obviously quick turnaround home and home. So we'll see, but I expect the Florida Panthers will not be as strong as maybe the Florida Panthers that we'll see in the first round of the playoffs.
So then if you are the Leafs, is that good or bad? Because
put the boots to them. No mercy. Right off the first shift, just pile drive their defense. Not having Aaron Ekblad there is a big loss for them. People don't realize, and Aaron's going to miss the first couple games of the playoffs too because of, a suspension from the league. So I would just say this. I would not play nice. I would go right after them. They don't have Matthew Tkachuk. You got to stabilize Bennett, Sam Bennett, and not allow him. But the biggest thing to me is 4 lines. Roll 4 lines. Wear them out. Force Florida to play 4 lines. I don't think they win a 4-line game against Toronto on Wednesday night. Doesn't mean they can't in the playoffs, but I'm telling you, on Wednesday night, because of the emotional drain from Tuesday that they should experience, I think it's going to be a very difficult game for Florida to win in Toronto on Wednesday.
Right. And you said sort of, really kick him in the teeth, get him, make it a statement game. Is that just really getting into their heads too, to bury that seed of doubt, put it in there if they do face each other in the playoffs?
I talked about Scotty Bowman before when I worked for him. And I'll tell you another thing. Whenever we played a potential playoff team we might have to face, the game planning changed. The intensity ratcheted up in practice. We were ready to go. We put a focal point on that performance that we were playing against a potential playoff rival. And if we had a chance to bury them in the standings, we made sure we were ready. And I would think that Craig Berube, from all his experience, whether it was as head coach in Philadelphia, Stanley Cup winning head coach, obviously in St. Louis, and what he's done so far this year in Toronto, I got to think he's going to put the same onus on his players. We bring an A game. It's not a heavy schedule for them. They're home. They play Wednesday night, and then they play Saturday night against Columbus. It's not a heavy work week for them. So you got to bring it and put some pressure on it. And I think that's how they're going to sell it this week. I do.
Right. So when it's not a heavy work week and you do have 2 home games and you have 8 games left before the playoffs, as a coach, what kind of mindset do you want to instill in the players so that maybe you don't get too lackadaisical with what's going on?
Intensity in practice. They're not long practices, but drills. So whatever you think you need to focus in on. Power play is really good right now. Can we be better on the penalty kill? Probably. How's our down low coverage and defensive zone coverage? How's our up high coverage and in zone coverage? How's our neutral zone game? You decide whatever you think as a coach, and you ratchet up the intensity, not for 50 minutes, for 20 minutes, 17 minutes, but you ratchet it up for those minutes so the guys are paying attention. And then you can just let your assistants take over and run the ship. But that's kind of what the message should be. It's worked before. I was part of it twice, and I think I know how it works. And I got to believe that Coach Berube will be doing the same type of thing.
Right. So we look at the schedule. As Pierre just mentioned, they have the Panthers on Wednesday this week, and they have the Blue Jackets on Saturday. So only 2 games before our next McGuire Monday. What are maybe 2 to 3 things you want to see them check mark from these 2 games?
I want to be smart in terms of 5-on-5 play. I don't want to take bad penalties, especially in the offensive zone. That's number one. I want to see better puck management late in periods, especially by the defensive blue line. I want pucks out. I want good playoff habits. I don't want to create second and third chance opportunities for the opposition because we don't manage the puck well. So I'm continually stressing that. And the other thing is continue to grow being aggressive in your own zone, taking away time and space more quickly so that you can get on the counterattack and start putting pressure on the opposition. So those would be the 3 things I'd probably be looking at.
Okay, and so coaches like to go, we're just focusing on the next game, 1 game at a time. But in many games or in many strategies in life, I think to like playing pool, where you have to think a couple steps ahead with in terms of where you're placing your ball and how you're shooting. I learned this from my grandma, who's a pool shark. She's 93 years old. She whips my butt every time I play her, and it's because she's looking to 2 or 3 shots ahead all the time. So then when you look at the following week, you get the Panthers again, and you're going to be on the road that time. And then you get Tampa right after on the road. You get potentially 2 opponents that you could see in the playoffs. What do you maybe sort of plan for in terms of knowing that, okay, we got these 2 games this week. It's going to be a little bit maybe quote unquote easier than the last week. But right after that, we got to go and put it in a high gear.
So first of all, you're teaching habits. This whole week, you're teaching habits. And people say, well, these guys are pros. Come on. No. Habits have to be created every single day, especially with younger players and sometimes guys that have never won before. There's a reason maybe why they've never won before. Maybe they didn't learn their habits well enough. So you just teach habits all the time. That's number one. I like the fact, and I look at the schedule like you did. I'm really happy that you brought that up. I'm glad they get to go to South Florida. There's nothing wrong with a little sun, a little bit of intensity when it comes to the games, but a little bit of downtime away from the scrutiny of Toronto. There's nothing wrong with that. It's actually good at this time of the year. So I think it's real positive for them. I don't think it's a negative at all. And that's as a leadership group, and I got to think Austin's talking about that. Johnny's talking about that. I think Morgan Riley's talking about that. There's nothing wrong with that, Julie. I think what you just raised is a really good point. Really good point.
Well, and also gives them an opportunity to see sort of like being on the road. Like it's in terms of that playoff intensity and like maybe this is the same hotel we'll be staying in, sort of like replicating, you mentioned habits. Like if we are going to be facing Florida, are we going to be facing Tampa? Is this what it's going to be like? And I know you don't want to necessarily like assume that these situations are going to be like that. And they have faced both of these teams before, probably stayed in very similar hotels, but kind of like, I love this quote from like Harry Potter, but it's like, he's like, I knew I could do it because I'd done it before. And I always think about that when things in my life are difficult, or I think like I have imposter syndrome. I'm like, wait a second, I've done this before. And so I think that something like that, maybe if the Leafs, they go on the road and if they're able to beat these two teams, or if they at least learn something from it, there's so much value for that for just the playoffs.
That is so eloquent. That's really well said. I completely agree with everything you just said. I tell this to my friends all the time, guys that were teammates of mine, whether it was in football or hockey, really good, close teammates. They're all like, what's it like to win the cup? I said, you can't explain it until somebody's been in it. It's hard. You really can't tell. So it's a different thing. And everybody says they want to win it, but until they get there, they don't understand what you really have to do to win it. And I can tell you right now, when I was part of one team that won my first time, I was so much better prepared the second time. It's just amazing how much you learn when you go through the whole process and it's successful.
Right.
And I think what you just said is so spot on. The Harry Potter quote is elite. That's so good. That's so good.
Well, I use that for myself whenever I start thinking like, oh no, is this opportunity like I'm nervous for it or something's come up. It's like, wait a second. I've done this before. Like I know how this goes. I know there's muscle memory there within it in terms of also then like I think when you go through difficult circumstances and they might be challenging, there's a certain element of just really relishing in the fact that you have done it before and like you want to do it again. Yeah. Like I've mentioned the idea of like you want to be, Kobe with 3 seconds left. Like you want to have to take that shot. And we talked about it. I think your name, is it Kristen Sims? I'm like from Wisconsin who took the penalty shot.
Oh, yeah, no, the young lady that in the female Frozen Four, yeah.
Yeah, when she put her hand up to take it.
Yeah, I want this.
Game on the line. That's next level, like knowing and wanting to have that pressure, I think is just so remarkable. But I will, before I let you go and before we wrap things up, I got to ask you about some discourse that has sort of come to fruition recently, I've noticed, is that some people don't necessarily want the Leafs to win the Atlantic Division based on the fact that they maybe could play Ottawa. That's an old school matchup, and they would rather maybe them having to play a Florida or a Tampa most likely, because they've seen that before in recent years. And we haven't seen an Ottawa-Toronto playoff matchup in a long time. And you know that Ottawa team is going to be real hungry to try to take down the Toronto Maple Leafs. If you are maybe let's just say Leafs fans, what do you say to that? What do you think about that?
Inexperience in Ottawa will be a problem this year. It doesn't mean they don't have a good team. They have a good team. They just don't have a lot of playoff experience outside of Claude Giroux. There's not a lot of playoff experience there. That's number one. Number two, they got huge holes on the right side of their defense, and that doesn't play well against a Toronto Maple Leafs team that's got Matthew Nyes, Bobby McMahon, Scott Lawton, and Pontus Holmberg as left wingers. That doesn't suit Ottawa well. That's a bad matchup for Ottawa. And then the third thing is, we talked about faceoffs before. Faceoffs are going to be a bit of a problem for Ottawa against Matthews, against Tavares, against Domi, against Kampf. That's a bit of and Lawton even can go in there and take faceoffs. So as much as people don't want to play against them because they're probably nervous because of the youthful enthusiasm of Ottawa, and Ottawa's got so much of that, they don't have a lot of experience. Whereas Toronto's been kicked in the teeth. We talked about that before. And I think they're going to want to say, okay, well, Ottawa it is. I would not want to play Tampa right now. I watched Tampa on Saturday against the Islanders. I would not want to play against Tampa right now. And Vasilevsky's gone to another level. And I mean, no disrespect to Linus Ullmark at all. None, because he's had an amazing year. He's not Bobrovsky, and he's not Vasilevsky. He's not.
True.
Doesn't mean he's not good, Julie. He's good, but he's not as good as those guys.
Made a very good case. Battle of Ontario is what Toronto Maple Leafs fans want in the first round. And that sounds so great because that's so much of at least like the quote unquote glory years, which is so sad to say.
You know what'd be really good though? It'll be really good for Bet Rivers. We'll have some amazing post-game shows.
Yeah. That's my entire, like growing up almost, not my childhood, but like when I was I just remember like rollerblading to my friend's house and we'd watch Leafs Sens, and it was just like that was so consistent, and the Leafs always won it back in those years, like the late 90s, early 2000s type of time, and that's all I think about is like that was the best time.
So that's when you were a young lady, right? That's when you were a young lady? Is that
I'm
what
like,
you're saying? So you're saying that I was old because I was working those games? Is that what you're
no,
saying?
I'm saying experience trumps everything, as we just talked
I'm
about.
only joking. Good for you. Good for you.
I was getting slushies at Max Milk and Becker's and going in with my rollerblades to go watch the games. You think I even knew anything about like about anything? I just knew that I really liked Ty Domi and Darcy Tucker. That's all.
Well,
I was a big fan.
I'll never forget Curtis Joseph running into, I think it was Mick Magoo in the corner, the late Mick Magoo. And I'll never forget Daniel Alfredson shooting the puck at his buddy Matt Sundin one time. And so I have good memories of that. And I had so much fun doing good portions of those series over the years because I got to spend a lot of time with Harry Neal and with the late Bob Cole. And they were such good men. For a young, like I was just getting out of coaching and getting into the broadcast side, and to be around those men and to learn from them, especially Harry, in my job at the time, it was awesome. And I'll never forget how intense those series were. They were really intense.
Wow. I mean, what an incredible experience for you to be able to work with those two legends. And next time I got to ask you more about that, because I would love to know some great stories about Bob Cole and Harry Neal. But right now we've got to wrap things up, as this has been an incredible McGuire Monday to get you started and get you kicked off on a positive note for this week with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And we will have to see next week on McGuire Mondays just how things are looking after they will have faced the Florida Panthers and the Columbus Blue Jackets, and then heading into the hot heat of Florida, and obviously Florida and Tampa are in Florida. Thanks so much, Pierre McGuire, for a great show. And thank you guys for listening. Please like and subscribe and share, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.